is Christy Yale. I'm the agriculture teacher at Carrollton High School, and I would like to tell you today about one grant that we received from Monsanto and how it has truly changed how we teach here at Carrollton High School. I was hired at Carrollton 2 years ago, and when we started, the greenhouse, as you can see in this photo, was non-functioning. It had not been used for probably 8 years. The students and a lot of the neighbors actually just considered this to be the biggest eyesore of the school district and that it needed to be torn down. However, before I actually got hired at Carrollton High School, I started working on writing a grant to rebuild and repair this greenhouse so it can be turned into a learning lab for students. A week before school started, Dr. Cox, our superintendent, had informed me that we had received the $10,000 Monsanto grant and that we would be receiving it at the Farm Progress Show the next week. And so right before school started, my curriculum plans totally changed to focusing on this greenhouse. My ag mechanics students played a huge role in the repairing and rebuilding of this greenhouse, which fit directly into the curriculum that I wanted to teach them anyway. Early September, we started tearing down the greenhouse, and like I said, the ag mechanics students played a vital role in actually demolishing the greenhouse, getting it up to snuff, and starting to rebuild it. When the students were tearing this apart, they started to get an appreciation for what lack of care can do to a structure, and all of the work that they put into it, they really started to take pride in what they were doing. As you can see, this greenhouse was completely grown up with trees, weeds. We had to take it back to the framework, and once we got it there, we were able to start planning how we wanted to rebuild this greenhouse. Once the greenhouse was all torn down up to the frames, the ag mechanics students were set with the task of preparing the groundwork and the floor for concrete. So this worked really well into our ag mechanics class, where I teach concrete. I teach how to calculate the volume and the yards of concrete that are needed, how to build forms, pour concrete. So as a class, both ag mechanics and horticulture class, we decided about the amount of aisleway and space that was needed in the greenhouse for the floor. Once we determined this area, we were able to start preparing for the concrete floor that we were going to pour. The students were going to be the ones pouring the floor and prepping the groundwork for this task. Students got to use the surveying equipment, which they learned about in soils and learning about land use in our agriculture science class, but here they got to put it to work in an ag mechanics setting. Some of the students coming into the class had some carpentry experience, which really helped move things along. Myself, am not a carpenter, but got to use the skills that these students had and put it to work, and they really saw the connection between what we were doing in class and what they'd done on the job in the summer. We decided with the money that we had for the greenhouse that it would be more cost effective to not pour the entire floor for the greenhouse but use aisleways. That way the water could run off of the benches a lot better. We could also save money. Once the forms were made, the last thing was to level the rock and to test it with the surveying equipment to make sure that the ground was all level and that we knew the depth that the concrete sidewalk would be, so we can calculate the amount of yards of concrete that we would need accurately. have some volunteer help. Actually, my dad and my brother and my husband were there to, with some concrete experience, to help the students pour the concrete flooring and to keep them on task. Although they were there, the students got to do most of the work. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't realize that several of the other classes were going to come out and watch as the concrete floor was being poured. So the students had quite an audience that day. There were about 8 students in my ag mechanics class who had had some experience with concrete or just had an interest in this that stuck around all day to ensure that the concrete floor got finished before the end of the school day. This project had really allowed our students to put together the skills that they learned in the classroom and put it to work in the field per se, in a real life situation. Looking back now, the students say this was their most fun project that they had done in high school. When the concrete was finished, the last thing to do was finish the concrete, and so a variety of different students got to test their hand at finishing the concrete surfaces. When the concrete work was all done, the greenhouse seemed to be complete, but with the amount of money that we saved by not pouring the entire concrete floor, we were able to actually add on 24 feet to the back of the greenhouse. So I don't have many pictures of this actually happening, but the students measured 6 foot on center, then 24 feet out. We got that ordered, and it got in no time. So here's a picture of the 4 extra hoops structures that we got to add on to extend our greenhouse another 24 feet. So we took our original greenhouse, which was 21 by 50 feet, and made it 21 by 75 feet. Once the greenhouse hoops were finished, we were ready to frame up the last end wall. The ag mechanics and the industrial arts construction classes were able to be here to help set the posts. Our horticulture kids, since we had about 25 of them last year in ag class, they got to put the covering over the greenhouse. There's actually 2 layers of covering, which provides better insulation for our greenhouse. It was quite the learning curve to figure out how to put this cover on, but once we figured it out, the kids really got the hang of it. Thankfully, this covering will last about 5 to 7 years, they predict, so we won't have to do this all too often. Teamwork and the shop, and with a few new boards and some new screws and new bench tops, repaired and rebuilt the benches to a usable form. Plants arrived, as I said, in March, and the students were actually given a special task in horticulture that combined business skills with um, plant production skills. We call it the custom grower business. We had each student an individual grower of a greenhouse. So we acted like they were wholesale growers, and they had to grow our plants and then sell them to our FFA chapter at the end of the year. When transplanting day came, they each had a specific number of plants that they had to put on their bench of each variety. When all was said and done, we had some extra bench space left, as you can see here, but it soon filled up once the plants started growing. If you can notice here, there is some blue tape that's dividing the benches. You can see on the right, like the middle benches. That blue tape separated out 9 square feet. Each student had 9 square feet to grow his or her variety of plants for the growing season. With that, they also had to calculate the input costs for each plant, calculate the profit margin of, and give me a bid on what they would like to sell their plants for. Although I can't find many pictures of the students as the plants started growing. After a couple months, the plants completely filled the greenhouse and the students were ready for plant sales. We opened up our greenhouse to the kindergarten class at the grade school for Earth Day, who wanted to come in, check out our new greenhouse, learn about how plants are raised in a greenhouse setting, and then give the students an opportunity to plant their own plant. During the plant sales at the high school, the FFA had plant sales the last 2 weeks of April, and we had never done plant sales before. Obviously, this is a new greenhouse. We got the word out in the paper. The students had to write news articles for the newspaper. We also had signs uptown on the square inviting people to come in. We put flyers around the school, and customers started flocking in. These two girls here were my best saleswomen, and they could get people who might come in to buy 1 or 2 plants to buy 2 flats of plants at the end of it. They were very, very good salesmen. They knew what questions to ask the customers, and they knew about all of the plants because they each had individually taken care of their own plants for their custom grower business. So they knew the ins and outs of every variety of plant, and it really showed when plant sales came. We actually sold out our plant sales in 2 weeks, which was a first for me. At my previous school, it might take us a month to sell plants, and then we still have to give them away at the end of the sale. And so we were ecstatic when after the second Saturday we were sold out. Our students also use some of the plants in the greenhouse to landscape around the school. We had done some landscape design in classroom, and then they were able to take those skills and apply them in the school grounds. In the off season, after our plant sales were done, we had got the idea with the students and I to do some science projects in the extra back 24 feet that we had added onto the back of the greenhouse. So aquaponics is fish and plants living in the same ecosystem. What we had done is we took these bulk fertilizer tanks and we had cut the bottom third off. We had saw videos on this on YouTube. We had researched different aquaponics structures, and this was free to us because the fertilizer company was ready and willing to give them to us at no charge. We had two separate systems, which you'll find out once we get further pictures. This is our tomato bucket system. The plants grow hydroponically, so there are no fish on this middle bucket system. The plants, there's a red bucket at the bottom. That's the basin, the catch basin with the fertilizer water. There's a water pump in there that pumps it up through the thick black line into each of the lines going into the buckets. The fertilized water goes in there. It's filled with perlite, which is a type of volcanic rock. It's really white, really light. And then the PVC pipe coming out of the bucket drains the extra water back down, and the PVC pipe is at an angle, so it drains back into the red bucket and keeps recirculating. Our aquaponic tanks each have a separate system, and we're still in the starting stages of getting these to work. But the way it works is that you have the fish at the bottom, you have plants growing on the top. The fish have nutrient-rich poo water that will fertilize the plants. The plants can use that water, and how they use it, they actually filter the water that goes back down to the fish. And once you get it started, which takes a while, you have complete ecosystems. So by having different separate systems, we have 8 different tank systems, students can run different trials and test different things within each enclosed system. Students in horticulture this year have designed their own hydroponic system. So some of these, this girl right now has PVC pipes with strawberries in them, right behind our tomato buckets. There's another system that students have developed that use PVC pipe to grow plants, and the water washes over them. This girl's systems, they have 3 aquarium tanks, and they are going to be putting fish in one, fertilizer in another, and then a separate tank that's just fish to compare the different growing environments that the fish. Here students are transplanting lettuce sprouts into our aquaponics tanks. Here's another system that a student had developed. It's got some strawberry and just started some lettuce seeds. The students have a good time being involved hands-on in their science lab project. These are strawberries. The students are getting to see how they grow, what type of nutrients that they need, plant growth cycles, plant anatomy and physiology, all within the systems where they actually get to use them hands-on. Here's our system. It's difficult to see. We have some feeder goldfish right now that are setting the bacteria level in the water for our hydroponics. At the top of this, we had sprinkled lettuce seed on perlite to try to get the lettuce seed to start, and then we're going to transplant them to the other tops of the aquaponics. hydroponic systems that have the pink foam once those lettuce plants get large enough. Our lettuce and tomato that we are growing in the greenhouse will be donated to the Carrollton Food Pantry. We also have combined general science classes as well as math classes into ag classes to give them a different environment. So the math students actually this week had come to the ag class. We combined in a project and we gave them the task to try to find a more efficient way to heat the greenhouse. So the students were able to calculate the air volume of the greenhouse. They use vernier lab equipment and sensors to test the temperature of the greenhouse in the side where the heater is and the side that does not have the heater, and see how quickly it gets up to the temperature that we set on the thermostat. Students had to calculate air volume for our greenhouse. It didn't take them long to figure out that our greenhouse was like a cylinder, but they tended to forget that the greenhouse was a half cylinder. So giving them the hands-on experience to actually go out into the greenhouse, take the measurement, find the radius of our greenhouse, and do the calculations has given them some real hands-on experience. The greenhouse project that started out the week before school started, my first year at Carrollton, has turned into more than just a project for the ag mechanics and more than just a place to grow plants in the greenhouse. It really has taken learning to a different level. Students in math and science classes can come out to the greenhouse and have hands-on learning experiences instead of learning about it just in a textbook or hearing about it. Real-life math applications, science applications, and being in a different environment truly does give the students a different aspect on learning, and they tend to have a lot of fun at it. We are very thankful for the opportunity to have this wonderful greenhouse and have our school board at Carrollton support our greenhouse and all of the learning that takes place for our students. Thank you very much.